You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome into another 3-Mile Pod. I am John Kurtz, joined by the full crew here today. Cole Manbeck is back with us, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury. Derek Young from K-State Online fame with us here as well. And we're going to be talking about a 31-3 ass kicking that K-State dropped on Baylor in Waco. Just choked the life out of them from start to finish. Very fun. To add to that, it was a perfect college football Saturday. TCU beat Texas. Not only is it fun to watch Texas lose, but K-State now is back in the driver's seat for a Big 12 championship game appearance. Kansas lost. Iowa State lost. Oklahoma lost in embarrassing fashion, and they are in absolute shambles right now. Missouri got smoked. Texas A&M got smoked. I'm pretty sure Colorado lost because that's an evergreen comment you could make every single Saturday. Nebraska got smoked. It could not have gone better for K-State fans on Saturday. So, gentlemen, I'm excited to talk about it all with you. Maybe crack open a little 360 vodka, some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon while you do it. Of course, brought to you by Holiday Distillery, great supporters here of our podcast. Great K-State folks as well. I'm sure they were celebrating with some of that over the weekend. If you're going to Morgantown this weekend for the good old 1 o'clock kickoff on ESPN Plus, they're going to have plenty of moonshine, but maybe bring some 360 vodka just to, swap with them. They'll give you some moonshine. You give them some 360 vodka, and everything will be A-okay. Be on your way. How much did you guys enjoy Saturday? Huh? Pretty fun? Cole? Hey, let me, there are a couple things I need to say here actually first about me. We'll leave the quarterback thing alone for right now, okay? But I got something to say about that, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 things. But remember when Derek was like, the rest of the season, it's going to be so nerve-wracking, and Cole was like, how am I going to deal with this? And I said, guys, they're going to blow somebody out. They've blown 2 somebodies out. 2 murders. 2 murders this year, the second of which occurred in Waco on Saturday.
You
want to pat on the back, John?
You were absolutely correct. That was at Big 12 basketball media days when you made that statement, and we're on that kick. And
now let's ignore what else I said on that same podcast, which was
Will
Howard.
Yeah, the guy that you've been begging for at quarterback just 3 weeks ago. You wanted no part of.
That was like 4 weeks ago. Okay.
And by the way, there were during that podcast when you did get that stray bullet, he was not even part of the conversation.
No, well, he was, because we were talking about the last time whatever. It was very dumb.
I'm a superstitious person, as you guys know, and I think John awakened Will Howard. That if it wasn't for that comment, who knows where things go? I mean, sure, I wanted to punch John in the face when I was in Fort Worth, and he made that comment about Will Howard, and then one series in, Adrian's out of the game. I was blaming John. I was like, he had to do this. But now, maybe you've reignited K-State football here, and they're in the driver's seat. So, yeah.
I tried to make everything work for everybody. I'm just doing my part here as an influencer, a micro influencer. That's what I was able to do. I used my powers for good. So, seemed pretty fun on TV. What was it like in Waco, DY?
Yeah, they tried blackout, which wasn't necessarily effective. I don't know if you guys saw, but when they have the part of the student section that runs across the field, they were all in yellow shirts, and they were going to take them off in unison after their first touchdown to reveal the black. And that never happened. So they didn't get to wear black.
So there's that. I also thought they'd be wearing black uniforms or something, which obviously they weren't. Right. It didn't seem very loud and rowdy.
No, Baylor never is, to be honest.
In my experience there, I think the only time I remember being kind of like that was that 2014 game when Big 12 title was still on the line for both teams. Other than that,
this one?
I was at that 2014 game, John. I thought that was a pretty loud atmosphere. They were pretty raucous that night. So,
out of the 4 road games, this was by far the most. I don't know if pathetic's the right word, but disappointing crowd. I mean, it was probably 95, 98% full, but it was. And look, they didn't have a lot to cheer for. So maybe it would have been different had they had something to cheer for. But even pregame, I thought it was a pretty abbreviated noise level of what you would expect for that kind of contest. It paled in comparison to what Kansas State dealt with, at all three of Iowa State, Oklahoma, and TCU, but all those being, pretty contested battles.
Well, one man did dare to suggest last week that the best option K-State had at quarterback definitively was Will Howard, and he was thrust into action 2 series into the game. And after not a terrible first drive, but a very long, arduous, 12-play, 43-yard drive that ends in turnover on downs, Will Howard comes in and moves the ball. I mean, I guess it wasn't all 97 yards that he moved the ball on that drive, but they complete a 97-yard touchdown drive. Bam, 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 like that. And they were off and running. Will Howard looked exactly like the Will Howard from the Oklahoma State game and the TCU game. I don't think this is a fluke anymore, guys. Shout out to our guy, KSU_fan, who put together the points per drive stats. But for Will Howard, non-garbage time points per drive, it's 4.46 points per drive for K-State this year. The best offense in the country for the season is Oregon, 4.1 points per drive. So the Will Howard offense at K-State, yes, a sample size of only 21 drives. That's not an entire Oregon season. It would go down if you just extrapolate it out. It's not totally fair to do that. But the way he has played so far would be significantly better than the best offense in the country in terms of scoring points, the efficiency at which K-State scores points with Will Howard at quarterback. They've scored touchdowns on 13 of 21 drives. Again, shout out to KSU_fan. 13 of 21 drives with Will Howard at quarterback. And the dude was just nails again. Can't say enough about him. I mean, not totally perfect, but not only was he delivering balls on the money, not only does he find ways to get the backs involved, it just seems like Deuce gets involved so much more when he is in there at quarterback. But he even just talk about pocket presence and athleticism to get away. I mean, he could sense when a rush was coming. He would wait until the last minute. He has this sixth sense about when to wait until the last minute to get rid of the ball, and he just makes good decisions and gets rid of it when he has to. I can't say enough about what I'm seeing from the dude right now. He looks like a total stud. That's an all Big 12 quarterback for sure playing right now.
Yeah, I don't think it's a fluke, obviously. I think we have enough of a sample size to maybe extrapolate that at the very least, and probably much more than that. And I don't know, man, from just quarterback skills and talent, I don't think there's a very big gap between the two. The biggest gap is probably athleticism, and that obviously goes in Adrian Martinez's direction. But aside from that, the gap is just the way the offense functions. It being just a lot smoother, much more well-oiled machine. They can operate much faster, it seems, with Will Howard, maybe the way that the offense was intended to operate, at least at the speed and the pace that they talked about in the offseason. Remember, the offseason was all this rhythm, all this, quicker pace, no huddle, getting to the line of scrimmage, maybe not always snapping the ball quickly, but sometimes snapping the ball quickly. We see that more often when Will Howard is under center rather than Adrian Martinez. And I'm not trying to compare the two because I don't think we want to get into that. That's really not fair because Adrian Martinez has never played bad, and he's given a lot to Kansas State already and has done everything they've asked of him and hasn't necessarily played poor. I mean, he revived his career since leaving for Nebraska, and he doesn't deserve that. But at the same time, Kansas State functions much better on the offense, and there's no question about it when Will Howard is that quarterback. Now, and I'm not going to argue that Will Howard should be the quarterback because I think he should be, and I don't think there's a question to that at this point. But I will say two things, and it's not to say we should have a quarterback controversy because I don't think we should. It's more to say let's not think that he's going to compete out there and do over 4 points per drive every game because that's probably not realistic. But I will say when it comes to Adrian Martinez has played two defenses that are better than any defense Will Howard has faced, that being Iowa State and Texas. Those are both ranked higher than anything Will has faced. And this is reaching a little bit because I know Mike Gundy has seen him twice, right? But no team that Will Howard has played this year has prepared for him thinking that he's the unquestioned starter. So that'll be curious if that, happens at some point, whether that be West Virginia or Kansas, what it looks like when a team definitely knows that Will Howard's going to play quarterback and they prepare exclusively for Will Howard for the entire week. We haven't seen that this year. I don't think that's the reason why Will Howard's successful, but it'll at least be a curious, example, something that we can make a conclusion upon, or at least remove that doubt from that.
I would throw in here real quick. I mean, Will Howard did play the TCU defense. I'm not sure if you watched them lock Bijan Robinson down to 12 carries and 29 yards on Saturday. It looked pretty damn good. I believe fans said it was the number 3, 5, and 6 defenses in the Big 12 that Will Howard has played against. So certainly not chopped liver here. The defenses that he's guarded.
That's the defenses that Adrian's played, right? 1, 3, 5, and 6. Yeah.
1, 3, and 5 for Adrian, 4, 5, and 6 for Will. So
yeah,
I mean,
3, 5, and 6, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. Baylor's defense is pretty solid. The thing that was impressive, I mean, they struggled early in the year. The thing that was impressive is you drop back and throw the ball 35 times against a Baylor defense that was 5th in the country in interceptions per game at 1.5, and led the country over the previous 3 games with 2.7 interceptions per game. They picked off Texas Tech. And who was the team? Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel picked them off 8 times in the last 2 games, right? And so for K-State to not turn the ball over at all against that Baylor defense, to not get sacked, what has been pretty remarkable, John, you mentioned Will Howard's ability to get rid of the football and recognize pressure, and the O-line has done a decent job of protecting him, but also his ability to recognize that. He's dropped back and thrown the ball 84 times. He hasn't been sacked. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable stat to not be pressured or not to give up any negative plays in the passing game.
I thought Texas would have just sacked the crap out of him if he would have been playing.
Well, I mean, look, I will say, you saw what Texas defense did to TCU. Didn't they have like 10 tackles for loss in the first half? Like they are a different animal. There's a good chance they don't get as many sacks, against Will Howard as I might have thought or perceived, because he does seem to recognize to get the ball out quicker. You talk about the points per drive against Baylor in non-garbage time. So you take away the last 2 drives when K-State was just bleeding the clock. 6 drives, 31 points. That's 5.2 points per drive for Will Howard on Saturday. So you think about that, you're almost scoring a touchdown per drive with him. That's a really remarkable efficiency that he showed on display. Thought he played tremendous as well. And he continues to make throws that are special. Some of these balls and these windows that he's hitting, none of this is a fluke at this point. He is getting the ball over defenders' hands just at the right level, getting it over the linebacker, downfield. Look at the TCU game, et cetera. Look at the throw to Ben Sinnott against Oklahoma State and against Baylor. I mean, some of these throws are pretty darn special and tight windows. And, so it's exciting. I mean, not only for the rest of this season with how he's playing, but for the future of K-State football, because it looks like they got a quarterback that's really turned it on, and K-State's got an all Big 12 type quarterback moving forward.
And even not, I think you're probably referencing the Sinnott throw that was like in that tight window between like 3 defenders where it's just timing and he dials it up perfectly. That was the first touchdown. But even the other one to Sinnott, that's like a back shoulder throw to the end zone. I mean, it's like, these are the things, and this is what I said about Will a couple weeks ago, so it's going to sound like a broken record, but these are things that I've watched other offenses do throughout the last decade of college football, just being like, why is it so hard here? Like, okay, we can run the quarterback, but like, why is it so hard to just operate an offense like this and utilize? Like, I'm just mesmerized by it. Like, holy bleep, K-State has a quarterback that just threw like a back shoulder touchdown pass to a tight end in the corner of the end zone. Like, I mean, Iowa State's offense is dreadful, but you'll still see them hit that to Xavier Hutchinson every once in a while. It's just refreshing, man. It is very, very refreshing to watch that happen for this offense.
And it gets pressure. It's not just his ability to throw it away when it gets there. It's standing in there when he's got a guy bearing down on him on 3rd down and delivering a crossing pattern over the middle that gets a first down. He did that 2 times, I think, against Baylor. One time was particularly impressive. I think it went to Malik, I want to say, on a crossing pattern. And he's done that, in a couple of times in the other games that he has played. So it's not just the throwaways. It's the ability to kind of stand in there with a guy bearing down on him and deliver a throw under pressure in a very stressful situation, put it on the mark and convert a first down. I mean, that's high level. That's you're graduating to another, age bracket of quarterback play. That's not elementary. That's not even, middle. That's pretty superior. And there's only, a few. There's just a group of quarterbacks that can do it at that clip. And Will Howard has graduated to that echelon. So It's pretty special to watch right now. If that continues, I mean, they're a tough out, obviously. And Adrian Martinez was the way he does it is everything is off script and it kind of looks unorganized and had a little chaotic. And Will Howard, when he does it, he makes it look pretty. I think we talked about that, when there was a little bit of a quarterback debate here a week or two ago. But because of the way that Will Howard gets it done, it makes some of their flaws that they do have as an offense disappear as well.
Yeah, I mean, he gives, to your point, John, he gives his players a chance to make plays. He gives them that opportunity. He let Ben Sinnott go up and make a play there, and he did it with Cade Warner at TCU. Now, it was a dangerous throw, but Cade Warner made the play. And maybe K-State's skill position talent is better than we ever thought, just because now they're having the opportunity to make these plays. And K-State is taking shots downfield. And so that's a positive factor as well. And look, again, it's a small sample size, but I think we've seen enough to know Will Howard's pretty darn good. His quarterback rating, according to ESPN right now, ranks 9th in the country, or would rank him 9th in the country if he had enough attempts. You're talking about Drake May, Hendon Hooker, CJ Stroud. Those are the guys up there right around where he would be with a 168 QBR. And just for reference, Will's QBR the past 2 years was right around like 102, 103 on average. So he's clearly taking a big step. He's averaging 8.5 yards per pass now on the year on 84 pass attempts. So really playing well. And I thought Colin Klein did a fantastic job with the play calling on Saturday. I mean, not only the trick play, obviously, but one of the plays I absolutely loved was K-State started out in shotgun, moved Will Hunt. It was a 3rd and 1, I think. They moved Howard under center. Looked like they were going to run a QB sneak. Defense sucks in, and they just took the snap and immediately threw it out to Phillip Brooks on the perimeter. Easily got 5 yards. I mean, just some of the new creative things that they're doing in the offense, I really like. And I thought Klein did a really nice job. And any concerns about Colin Klein as the offensive coordinator have really been alleviated in Big 12 play. This offense has been humming pretty well with him.
I would throw in too. I love the play where Deuce, I think they were in like a quad out on the side, and Deuce, just 3 guys take off. Deuce stands there for a second and then just kind of walks in behind him. And they were able to get the ball to Deuce again in space, and he picks up like 5, 6, 7 yards easily. A lot of creative things happening there. I think the point about Howard just making everybody better is that's such a salient point, man. I mean, DY said, how long ago was that, Derek, that you said they think Ben Sinnott is an NFL player? And, we've seen him some, and he had some moments. And to be fair, like Adrian Martinez has utilized him this year, but we didn't see that. I mean, Ben Sinnott all of a sudden looks like baby Kelsey out there when Will Howard is willing to go throw the ball to him and really utilize him. He's making much better use of him. Cade Warner, Malik.
Sinnott did have 4 catches, 80 yards against Oklahoma, right? So there was
that's what I'm saying. I mean, but it was not that. It was not leaping back shoulder catch in the end zone. We didn't know Ben Sinnott had that in him. We do now, because Will Howard threw a pass that Adrian Martinez would never have thrown. Not trying to make this a referendum on Adrian Martinez, but that is a fact. Ben Sinnott is a better player with Will Howard out there. Deuce Vaughn is a better player with Will Howard out there. I'm very convinced of this. I think Malik was still a little bit slowed on Saturday, and that showed, but Cade Warner too. And then the defense, when you drive down and you have this efficiency where you're scoring ruthlessly, 13 touchdowns on 21 drives, and you get a Baylor team that likes to run the ball 66% of the time, down by a couple of scores. Now you've changed the life for your defense. You've made the defense's life easier. So I think there are just a lot of tentacles to this that are wonderful with the way he's playing. And I think that had a huge impact on the game on Saturday, that the defense could operate with Baylor playing from a couple scores behind for basically the entire game.
We probably haven't talked about the defense enough. If you want to exclusively talk non-garbage time, this is the 5th opponent this year they've not allowed to reach the end zone. That's half the schedule. Half the schedule has not found the end zone against Kansas State in non-garbage time. 3 of those being Big 12 teams. What was it? Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and the team they just played, Baylor. So we probably haven't spoken enough about the defense. That's a really, really good side of the ball. Joe Kleinerman. You can't say enough about the job that he has done. They're using Khalid Duke a little bit differently now too, and he's become a little bit more of an effective player on that side of the ball just because he's playing with his hand on the ground a little bit more, and I think that's a more comfortable spot for him. Although he's a pretty good Sam linebacker, and I think people don't give him enough credit for that. But the more that they can integrate Desmond Purnell and be comfortable with him and what he's doing on the football field, or maybe Gavin Forshea at that spot, the more the Clee Duke can perhaps be effective and give them another pass rusher off the edge, depending on how they want to play it, especially since I don't know that, at least in this past game, I think Brendan Mott and Nate Matlack were both going through some things too, so they weren't 100%. So that probably played into that strategy. Eli Huggins played a heck of a ball game, I thought. Daniel Green obviously looked spectacular. That was a night-day difference than what he looked against Texas. So I imagine health played a considerable role in that. I wonder if they need to maybe scale Austin Moore back a little bit, because it almost feels like he's starting on a little bit of a downward trend, maybe hitting the wall a little bit. So I wonder if they consider scaling him back in practice. Obviously, he's a smart football player and still playing good. Just the splashiness has kind of left him in the last week or two. And the secondary is really great. I echo Boydo and Julius Brent. Probably two guys not talked about enough this year, just because they had some unfortunate and unlucky moments this year. But I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find a better cornerback duo in the Big 12 than those two right now.
Yeah.
Well, I was waiting for you to weigh in on the defense here.
I thought you might jump in too. I mean, I completely agree with DY on Julius Brents and Echo Boydo. I mean, I think they are the best cornerback tandem in the Big 12. So they're playing terrific. I'd be curious. Yeah, I think one of the biggest plays of that game, honestly, was the Kobe Savage interception on that first drive, just because K-State had turned it over on downs, and then Baylor was humming on that first drive. I mean, they looked in rhythm, and they were just going right down the field. And then that ball gets thrown up in the air. Now, even if it's not picked, I think that was third down, so Baylor would have to settle for a field goal. But it was still a big play to turn them over there, and K-State then to go down the field and score a touchdown and take the lead, and then they just took it from there. But yeah, I mean, I thought one of the big stories of the game also is Baylor was 0 of 3 on fourth down against K-State, and Chris Kleiman had talked about going into the game how much Baylor goes for it on fourth down. And they came into the Saturday, number 2 in the country, converting 2.5 fourth downs per game. They went 0 of 3 against K-State. In Big 12 play, they were 16 of 22, converting 73% of their fourth down attempts. And they could not do anything against K-State, 4 of 15 combined on third and fourth down. So K-State's defense was able to get off the field, combined with sustained drives by K-State's offense, which led to a time of possession for K-State of over 37 minutes, which is, Baylor wants to control the clock. That's what they do. They're number 11 in the country and lead the Big 12 in time of possession. They want to run the ball and control the clock and keep the defense off the field. And K-State held the ball 6 minutes longer than any other team had held it against Baylor this season. So really everything, all facets of the game, special teams, defense, offense, was clicking for K-State. It's right up there with the Oklahoma State game as best performance of this season.
Well, and maybe, I mean, you were bringing up Cole, best performance of the Kleiman era. Best game of the Kleiman era.
I feel that way. Maybe I'm prisoner of the moment a little bit. I certainly could see why anyone would argue 2019 Oklahoma or Oklahoma State this year. I just feel like in that moment, in that situation against a Baylor team that I respect, against Dave Aranda, who I really respect, and both teams, potentially Baylor controlled their own destiny on the road. To go on the road, that's where it's at for me. And, you lose your quarterback, and I know Will Howard's played well, but just some of the circumstances that unfolded and to dominate in the way they did. I mean, I was feeling pretty darn confident. I don't usually get to watch a lot of games in Big 12 play where I just kick my legs up and I'm totally relaxed in the whole fourth quarter. And on Saturday I was, and to be doing that on the road against a Dave Aranda coach team, that's why I feel like you could argue, and in my opinion, it was their most impressive win in the Kleiman era, just because in all facets they were so sound, and it was on the road.
I'll grant you the element. To me, the thing that makes that a solid argument is the element of what was at stake. And yes, being on the road for sure too. But the element of what was at stake, where, we've complained for a long time about, like, Kleiman won't take the next step. They're kind of stuck here at this 7 or 8 win thing where they take care of business against them. They might jump up and beat in Oklahoma every year, but they have stupid losses that kind of cancel it out. You can't ever take that step. Well, this was a pretty massive step to regain your own control of your own destiny in the Big 12 championship race, a virtual elimination game on the road at Baylor. They're the defending champs. It's at night. and you go out and just smack them the way that you did. I think that is the part of the argument that is tough to really go against. I would say at the time, 2019 OU felt pretty significant because it was Kleiman's first year, and didn't have scholarship running backs and all that whole narrative. That first year, it felt like a huge deal at the time to get that. Now, in hindsight, we've seen him beat Oklahoma multiple times, and we knew the big deal for the program was taking the next step. So it's an interesting debate. I would tend to lean. I have no problem with saying that was the best game of the Kleiman era.
Well, and I think if you, I'm sorry, DY, real quick. I think if you look at that OU game in 2019, the final score wasn't indicative of what it felt like for much of that game. I mean, K-State was up 48-24. They were up by 4 scores. I mean, and if it finishes that way by a 17-24 point victory, it probably, don't feel that there's an argument, and that's probably the game, just because that was a very talented Oklahoma team with Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb and all the offensive weapons they have. But I still have flashbacks of haunting memories of being on the sideline thinking that OU recovered that onside kick. And that was a very stressful 3-minute review when that was going on. But I did want to say one other thing just about the defense, because one thing I didn't mention is a lot of people probably don't realize Baylor was 18th in the country in points per drive. They're one of the more efficient offenses in the country. And for K-State to hold them to 3, that's pretty darn impressive. This is a Baylor team that put up 38 the week before against OU, 45 against Tech the previous week, and then 35 against KU, but should have had probably 49 if they play sound football and don't make mistakes. So they were really scoring against teams. Heck, they put up 31 against a very good Iowa State defense, over 3 points per drive against the Cyclones in Ames. So this was a good Baylor offense that K-State manhandled.
The only the OU game that maybe would stack up would be the 19 game, because 21 came after losing to Arkansas State, and 20 came after losing to Arkansas State. It was the COVID year there was no stakes because obviously they finished 4-6 that season. This year's OU team kind of withered away, and that was after losing to Tulane too. So you just felt like you were almost just reviving yourself at that point. 19 OU you thought was maybe setting the stage for what this program could be under Chris Kleiman. So that's probably the argument. I would still take this year Baylor over that, probably by a wide margin. I also think this year Oklahoma State. I know that they've kind of been, completely eviscerated since that, so to speak, as well, even though they just beat Iowa State. And Oklahoma State's, kind of breaking down, and most of that's associated with their health situation as well. But 48-0 at home against Oklahoma State, with what the stakes were in that game too, I think that's probably in the top 3 still, even though Oklahoma State is considerably, shorthanded right now.
DY, you know what really impresses me, and you mentioned this on Power Cat Game Day as your what to watch for, but just the resilience of this team. Every time they lose, when you're starting to feel a little bit down, they bounce back and put together some of their best performances of the season. I mean, really, you could argue that their 3 best performances of the season are ones right on the heels of a loss. That says a lot about the coaching staff in this locker room, that they can bounce back the way that they do from those games and come out and they'll play the way that they do.
The performance after the losses were Oklahoma State, and Baylor. So
yeah.
Let's hope they don't need to go to that well again. But yes, I agree. And I would also say on the Oklahoma State game, I mean, again, remember Spencer Sanders was still playing for the majority of that game. It was, and Spencer Sanders is the guy that, I mean, I don't know what exactly Mike Gundy was doing, not starting him and then bringing him in halfway through the third quarter, but it worked, and they beat Iowa State because of it. And they're now 7-3. I know they have Oklahoma this week, and I forget who they finished with, but I mean, that still could be an 8-4, 9-3 team. It's not like I don't think it was going to be a team that plummets to 6-6 or something like that. So that's still, that still has a lot of teeth to it.
And even in the condition that they are in, no one else has beaten them 48-0.
Correct. Like that still deserves, we should not forget that and poo-poo that or downplay the significance of it. I think that was still a huge game. All right, we have some injuries to talk about. Adrian Martinez, we have reports surfacing on social media about Adrian Martinez's health after he went out on that quarterback sneak, and then Kobe Savage. Unfortunately, that one not looking great. We will talk about that coming up next. All right, back here on 3MA, John Kurtz, Derek Young, Cole Manbeck. Here is the not so fun part of the podcast. We got to talk about injuries. It didn't feel like during the game that it was all that bad. Kobe Savage did go out in the first half after he had his interception, and you had some concerns there. Adrian Martinez went out, but it looked like on the sideline they were putting some kind of sleeve on his leg, and that he was going to be okay enough to come back in, and then was standing on the sideline. I mean, it was reminiscent of Iowa State, of TCU, honestly, with him standing on the sideline after being injured and not really thinking it was that bad. But here we are with that staring us down once again. Let's start with Kobe Savage. Kobe Savage, it did not sound great from Chris Kleiman at the postgame press conference. What are we thinking on Kobe Savage's status the rest of the year, DY?
Yeah, I would say that Chris Kleiman's initial reaction in that press conference when he said it doesn't look good, that feels like the direction's headed. I think Chris Kleiman knew at that point that there were some concerns, and I imagine we'll hear on Tuesday that those might have been confirmed, so to speak. So, look, I think Chris Kleiman knew at that point that it wasn't looking great, but he'll want to announce that himself, I am sure.
Impact of losing Kobe Savage, Cole?
Yeah, I mean, that's a blow. I mean, he's been one of K-State's top 3 or 4 defensive players. And I mean, the secondary's been pretty darn good, but him and Josh Hayes are your 2 top safeties.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I could argue 1A or 1B on that. They're both so valuable. And, you know, Kobe Savage leads the team actually with 3 interceptions, but it's not his tackling ability in the open field. I mean, that you look at the play he made against Bijan Robinson on that 3rd down. He's, you know, one of the leaders in that secondary. They play a lot of safeties, but in a 3-3-5, you know, you're going to rely on your safeties more. So anytime you lose one of them, it hurts, especially you lose one of your best ones. So he's been an impactful player and a leader in that locker room. And so that hurts. And TJ Smith is going to have to step up. You know, ever since he got injured a couple of years ago, it's been a little bit of a struggle for him, but he's going to have to step up. BJ Payne, you know, other guys that they're going to rotate in at safety more now is a reliance on it. I mean, they played 6 safeties for much of the year, right? But Savage, it feels like he's on the field 90+% of the time. They hardly take him off, it seems like.
No, he plays. He's usually in the top 3 in the defensive snap count every game, because we go and look at those, and that's a tough loss. You said top 3 or 4 players on the defense, and that might be right. And then I think about it a little bit more. I'm like, who you got? So that tells you how good the defense is, because then I start to think of who you got to leave off of to put Kobe in the top 3 or 4. Not saying he's not in the top 3 or 4, but if you're putting Kobe in there, you're putting Felix in there, or are you putting Austin Moore in there? So then you're leaving off.
Daniel Green, Eli Huggins, Julius Brents.
Then you're leaving off Julius Brents and Daniel Green, which is funny to say the least. I'm not sure. That just tells you how good this defense is. But Savage is a loss. There's a reason why he plays probably a greater share of snaps than most of the guys on the defensive side of the field.
Yeah. All right. So that part is tough. This part is a little more unexpected. Out of nowhere, Saturday night. So Colby Van Camp, who is the sports director, I believe, at the student radio station, said, breaking, per a source close to K-State football, Adrian Martinez's leg injury will cause him to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Story still in development and has not yet been broken by the university. So there's that. And then GoPowerCat.com took that, threw it up. There's a free story up there on their site if you want to read it. And it says, sources have said the Kansas State quarterback is likely to be sidelined for multiple weeks. Sources have confirmed with GoPowerCat that the Martinez injury is more severe than initially considered in Waco. So potentially some validity to this report that it could be a multiple week thing for Adrian Martinez. And look, I'd be lying to you if there wasn't a part of me that said, okay, be careful what you wish for. I definitely wanted Will Howard to be the quarterback. I did not want it to be at the expense of losing your insurance plan, your insurance policy, and a guy that has done great things this year for K-State. And that is something I don't want to get lost or twisted in all this conversation, where I was pretty convicted that Will Howard was the better of the 2 options. But Adrian deserves no slander. He's still done a great job this year, and K-State's not at the point that they're at right now without him. And the finish to that thought that I had going into the day yesterday was like, and they may well need him again at some point this year. So this is not meant to be any kind of attack on Adrian Martinez. He's just up against a guy in Will Howard right now who, as we said, is producing at a level higher than the best offense in the country in Oregon at this point. So just outplayed by a dude who's totally red hot right now. But you don't want to lose Adrian either, because now you're one snap away from Jake Rubley against Jalen Daniels in Kansas in the Kansas game rather. So that to me, I'll set the scene. DY, I'll let you take that wherever it is that you want to go, but certainly don't love the possibility of that being a reality out there.
I certainly don't have anything that would necessarily refute either of those two reports from either entity, but it's just not necessarily also a direction that I'd like to go in on Sunday or Monday. I think it's pretty early, even if it does turn out to be true. And quarterback things, coaches are pretty sensitive to that, and they like to handle that on their own accord. So I'll allow them.
Are they? I don't know. Bill seemed to be pretty cool with me asking about the quarterbacks a lot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and Chris Kleiman, he likes to muddy the waters too. So, yeah, no, I'll let them do that on their own accord. But I'm not here to refute either of those two things, and I do think it sucks for Kansas State, because quarterback depth is something that's pretty valuable in this league. I don't know that any team has only played one quarterback this year. One doesn't come to mind. Maybe Iowa State. Is that the only one?
No, it might be. Yeah.
Yeah, because West Virginia even benched JT Daniels this past week as well, and we'll probably talk about that later in the week. So quarterback depth is important. It also sucks for Adrian Martinez, who's been through this before, and he's done everything that they've asked for him at Kansas State, and he's earned everything that he's been given, and it's awesome to see the success that he's kind of been able to enjoy this year because of all the stuff that he was mired with at Nebraska that was probably no fault of his own, because he's cleaned up everything that they said that was wrong with him there. So this is disappointing for him, but I certainly, if it turns out to be true, I certainly hope that he can still enjoy, the last, handful of games that's left with him at Kansas State in some capacity. But I hope some of it's in a uniform, and I hope he is available for his sake. But I can't refute the report.
Yeah, no, I hate it for Adrian. I mean, it's this is a guy in his last year of playing college football that came to Kansas State, talked about how he wanted to have a chance to play in the NFL, that this offense fit his style, and he's been banged up not only for much of his career, but this season as well. And to get hurt on a QB sneak, it sucks. It's bad luck the way the guy landed on his leg there. And so it's incredibly unfortunate. This Adrian Martinez has been solid for K-State. And I've hated for him that he's had to deal with the whispers and the murmurs of everyone begging for Will Howard to play. But the reality is K-State's got two good quarterbacks, and Will Howard just played lights out. And so Adrian has had to go through more scrutiny and ridicule as a result of that, even though he's been pretty darn solid for K-State, and they wouldn't be where they are if it wasn't for him. So I hate that for him, but at the same time, also on the football field, to what John mentioned, you don't have a security blanket now, and you got to keep Will Howard healthy, because you know what the alternatives are. We saw that at TCU. That's not a knock on Jake Rubley. I just don't think he's ready. We've seen what Jaron Lewis has done in the past. We haven't seen him this year, but Will Howard is the guy that you now have to play and keep healthy. And, to K-State's credit, since the TCU game, they have not really ran him. I think he's ran 3 or 4 QB design runs in the 2 games he's played since TCU. So
he had to against Baylor a couple times just for the stuff that they were running. You can't run a fake QB power and not be willing to run QB power, but
yeah. So, I think that they've done an effective job of that, and I think they're going to have to rely on that, which they've proven they don't have to run the quarterback to be effective offensively. That's one of the biggest takeaways that I have, is the thought has always been at Kansas State, you gain so much by running the quarterback, and at K-State you can be more successful by having the QB run game with the personnel that you have. But K-State has proven now with Colin Klein leading this offense and Will Howard at the quarterback position that you don't have to run the quarterback to be effective. And, just 3 weeks ago, we had that argument or debate on here, right? K-State shifting and pivoting away from that QB run game, and they're kind of doing it, and it's still working. The offense is probably being more effective than ever.
Yeah, that is. And the other thing, let's go back to, Will Howard not taking sacks, again, being better about this. Was someone talking me off the ledge when I first saw that last night. They're like, well, hey, he's not taking a lot of hits other than when they were having him run the ball, which is how he got hurt at TCU. I was like, okay, I get it. Deep breaths. deep breaths. But yes, hate it for Adrian. Sincerely hate it for Adrian. Wonderful human being, guy that's been nothing but class since he's been here. Won some big games for K-State and obviously competed his ass off. So hate that, and I hate that, even before this, that any of the discussion about how well Will Howard was playing would have to turn into some sort of referendum on Adrian Martinez, because it absolutely shouldn't, and everybody should be very grateful and appreciative for what he's done here at K-State. And I certainly hope that there is in some way another chapter of that, maybe in a Sugar Bowl for K-State. That would be nice. Would love to watch that for Adrian.
It's about what Will Howard is doing, not about what Adrian Martinez was.
Correct. I mean, that's why, again, I'm not even giving you the statistic of what the difference is in points per drive between Will and Adrian right now, because you don't want the discourse to go to that. It's enough discourse to say it's significantly better than what the best offense in the country has done so far this year, what Will Howard has been at K-State in terms of efficiency scoring the ball. So, I mean, the only other thing I would mention on the injury front is that, man, Daniel Green, you alluded to it earlier, DY, but like he looked back to full strength. Like, my God, I mean, helping pick up some of the slack for Austin Moore seems like he's kind of, like you said, hit maybe a bit of a wall at this point in the year. Like Daniel Green was back to flying around looking like the guy that we all have become accustomed to seeing. And that is huge. And that is the broadcast. We actually got this information that they said it was torn rib cartilage, which sounds like maybe the most painful possible injury for a linebacker to play through. I mean, I cannot even imagine.
He only missed one game.
Yeah. Shout out to, and he was going to try. What didn't you say he was like warming up, trying to play, to give him a few snaps in that Oklahoma State game?
Yeah.
Jeez, man. That is a football guy. Daniel Green, football guy, big time football guy. So kudos to him on that. All right. Well, big picture here. You now have control of your own spot in Arlington. You go win these next two games, right? Or if you win on Saturday and Kansas beats Texas, which I think is an entirely plausible situation, you would have already clinched at that point as well. General thoughts here, Cole, maybe we'll start with you on the Big 12 championship race and where K-State sits, and just any fear about closing this thing out here now with the two games left. I mean, I think K-State has the most manageable schedule. I'm not going to say easiest, but the most manageable schedule left of any of the contenders here that we're talking about.
Well, for starters, I'll be rock chalking it up on Saturday, cheering for our Jayhawks. I know we've taken some shots this year, but I'm actually a big TCU and KU football fan. So I just wanted to apologize for that. I mean, I was really also cheering on the Horned Frogs, obviously, on Saturday night, and really celebrating with my TCU brothers. So that was an exciting night. But yeah, for KU, that line has went from 7 to 9 already for the line against Texas on Saturday.
Is it
really? Yeah, but
by 9. That is a November game in Kansas that's going to be cold against a team that Texas will not be fired up to see, coming off of a devastating loss. Well,
it's you're going to learn a lot about that Texas football team coming this Saturday against KU, because it isn't an ideal weather situation or a great spot for them. But the reality, the jokes about KU losing or beating Texas, like, are they going to come in motivated for that off a letdown loss at home with criticism now going Sarkisian's way? Are they going to come out fired up to play, or because they're clearly a far more talented team, and if they come out ready to play, there is no reason Texas shouldn't score every drive with Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson running the football if you just commit to that. So be curious how physical Texas plays in that game. From K-State perspective of controlling their own destiny, that's absolutely right. And yeah, I mean, the next 2 weekends are going to be very anxious for us. I'm already did not really get to enjoy the game Saturday night because I already started thinking about West Virginia. And, I thought West Virginia was going to probably quit on the season potentially. And then they beat OU and they switch up the quarterbacks, and he kind of gave them a spark. K-State is still the better team. I think the line actually opened up around 5.5, and now it's at 7.5. K-State. So look, K-State by all the metrics is a far better team than West Virginia, and if they come in locked in, ready to play, they should win the game. West Virginia is a better football team at home. They beat OU and Baylor. If you would have told West Virginia fans coming into the year they beat Oklahoma and Baylor at home, they probably thought they'd have a lot better than a 4-6 record on the season. But the way things have shaken out, they haven't. And then they were within 7 of or actually they were within 3 of TCU in the last minute, right? In Morgantown. So K-State will have to be ready to play. I don't think there'll be a huge crowd or a raucous crowd from what we've seen in Morgantown the last few weeks. But that's where I'm at. I'm not looking ahead to KU. I am focused on the Mountaineers. Locked in.
To respond to Cole, I'll go on the flip side. If you told West Virginia fans that they were going to lose to KU at home at the beginning of the year, they'd probably think 4-6 sounds about right. Maybe fortunate. So, that's the other side of the coin,
Yeah.
which kind of tells you what the Mountaineer schedule in the football season has looked like. It's probably why Shane Lyons, athletic director for West Virginia, I don't know if we touched on it yet. He just got fired. So, and he's the chair of the NCAA Council, which is interesting to say the least, if you can maintain that post while not being employed in college athletics. So that'll be an interesting layer to everything as well. Look, Kansas State, if between all the teams still technically in it, you'd rather be in Kansas State's spot. So you can't feel not good about it. I feel pretty confident. I think West Virginia, even though it's on the road, is probably a much manageable game than KU at home, just because of what the stakes could be for that game and the inspiration and desires and motivations of the opponent for that game. Touching on KU Texas, since you guys did that, you know what? I'm done giving. I know the metrics say what they say, and I'm not even going against those metrics. I mean, you put your formulas, data, and you pump it out, and it says what it says. But I'm done trusting Texas and giving them credit for being the better team, because obviously it doesn't matter when they're the better team. Yes, this is a good spot for Texas, or a bad spot for Texas technically, or actually a good one coming off of what they were and everything. But they're playing on the road at KU. They had a good spot against TCU and fell flat. And yes, they should just run Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson to death, right? And win that game.
Texas Tech just ran all over Kansas. So
right. But they won't do it. I mean, I know Bijan was kind of stopped to an extent as well in this past week. I think he didn't even have 3 yards to carry unless he pulled off something late. But man, if you only give Bijan Robinson 10 or 12 touches a game in a game that's tight, really, it's not like you were blowing the doors off. You're losing. And that game was one possession for a long time, right? 3-0 until the third quarter. How's Bijan Robinson only have 10 or 12 carries? I mean, so to me, the metrics can say what they say, but Steve Sarkisian will coach his way out of a paper bag.
Yes, DY, but why watch Bijan Robinson tote it 20 times when you can watch Quinn Ewers go 17 for 39? Why would you do that? I mean, that sounds great. Quinn Ewers is the most overhyped, overrated quarterback in the country. And I mean, I know everyone's kind of on it at this point, but why Sark continues to let him throw it 40 times a game? Beyond me.
And he may turn into a hell of a quarterback. Don't get me wrong. And he makes some throws that leave your jaw on the ground, but the consistency just isn't there, because what game was it when Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson are running for over 8 yards a carry between the two? And they let Quinn Ewers throw it for 50 times while not completing 20 passes. That was Oklahoma State. That's why they lost that game.
Yeah. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman. He shows some glimpses, but he's so certainly the consistency aspect of it could come with time. But right now, I would, if I'm Texas, it's a pretty easy choice. I'm giving it to the All-American running back and a good secondary running back as well, and Roschon Johnson. So I would not. And first of all, in the Texas thing, I think all of us, I thought Texas would win by multiple scores. So against TCU. So I was shocked by that performance and the way TCU's defense completely held them down. On the West Virginia front, I would not downplay the firing of Shane Lyons as athletic director as a major distraction for West Virginia, because that essentially then paints the picture Neil Brown is going to be gone. And that's his big hire. And they're not going to let him make the next hire as the head football coach at West Virginia. And so I think Neil Brown now probably knows his boss is gone. They fired him, the guy that hired Neil Brown. I think the writing is on the wall, and the players probably recognize that too. So there is a distraction at play here for West Virginia, and we'll see if it has any sort of impact. Of course, you could argue the distraction was already there. I mean, they were 3-6, and there were already a lot of whispers about Neil Brown's future. So I'm not sure how significant it is, but I do think that will play a little bit of a part. And I kept hearing on Saturday on the broadcast the mention of bowl eligibility being such a motivating factor. And I just don't think that's a motivating factor anymore.
I don't think they want
Yeah.
So, some teams at this point don't want to play in a bowl. That's what people forget. Like that's another game. That's another 6 weeks when you could just go home and be with your family over the holidays. But instead you have to go bang against against your teammates for 5 more weeks just to play in a bowl game that you don't give a crap about. There's a lot of people put too much hype into that sometimes. So I'm glad you brought that up. And another layer, I know we'll touch on it more, in the podcast at the end of the week. Look, for that game, I think it was great. It was smart by West Virginia to switch quarterbacks because I think benching JT Daniels probably helps them beat Oklahoma. I don't think it helps them this week, though. That's my thing.
Yeah, I'll be curious what they do.
If there's ever a scenario where it's like the backup quarterback comes in and is able to win you one game, but then becomes a different deal when the other team has a week to prepare for him and all that. This feels very much like that because Garrett Green, and I had a lot of fun watching him, and he definitely provided a spark. He ran for over 100 yards on Oklahoma's dreadful defense, but he's just scrappy and runs around and tries to make plays that way, but not overly talented. Now, that doesn't mean I still look at it and I say, well, maybe there's like a rallying cry here. They think Neil Brown's going to be done. They're trying to win one for their coach and get behind this new quarterback. I mean, look, I very much am nervous about this game, but I do think logic would tell you that there's a better, like K-State should be pretty well prepared, I would think, for Garrett Green or JT Daniels, whoever it's going to be.
To be fair, because of the stakes, you guys would be nervous if it was Texas Southern. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to be nervous no matter who K-State's playing these last 2 weeks because what's at play here and what's at hand. So, I agree. I wouldn't even be surprised if they go back to JT Daniels on Saturday.
As a K-State fan, I want to see Green, though. And I know Daniels got benched and wasn't playing well, and they're not going to beat Oklahoma with JT Daniels, a quarterback. But for Kansas State, I think you'd rather see Garrett Green than JT.
Oh, yeah. There's no question. I would much rather see Garrett Green. He's more of a running quarterback. K-State with the ability to game plan for him. I think they can scheme and force a couple turnovers and mistakes from him. And, JT Daniels, he hadn't really been that big of a problem for West Virginia. Their offense, their passing game had been solid, and their running game was working. Now, Donaldson's out for the year, but Mathis is a decent secondary option at the running back position. So, yeah, I'm actually hoping they play Garrett Green at this point. And maybe they do just shift to that because, JT Daniels, does he have any eligibility left after this year? Is this his last season?
Gosh, he shouldn't. He's been in college for 15 years.
That dude's been in college since I was in college, so I don't think so. But
yeah. So if he doesn't, like maybe they just go to the youth, although does the youth really matter because Neil Brown's probably going to be gone in 2 games. I don't know. But yeah, on the bowl eligibility front, I just, like we talked about, I don't think it matters. Like you said, these guys don't want to go practice for 4 weeks for some meaningless bowl game. They want to go home for Christmas at that point. And so many guys opt out. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like they're probably going to have an interim coach, or a lame duck coach. So yeah, the whole practice thing doesn't even mean anything for them in all likelihood. And then you get so many guys that opt out of bowl games nowadays. If you're not playing for one of the upper echelon bowls or the playoff, then I don't think it's that big of a motivating factor.
Yeah, that's what we'll be telling ourselves all week to make us feel better. And then Saturday will hit, and we'll be real nervous. Real nervous.
Hey, at least you don't have to wait all day. It's not a night game.
Well, and at least I won't be stuck in a hotel room in Chicago, Illinois. At least I won't be doing that.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to bite my tongue about that.
Do we need to start another campaign?
Do we need to tweet
Get Cole out of Chicago this weekend.
Free Cole.
No. That's not who you need to tweet.
I mean, the campaign last time did get Brody to the game, so maybe it could get me out of Chicago. No, I would please don't actually send that tweet to my wife. I've already made it. I've made it a big enough deal already that that would put me in some trouble. So because I was even pulling on her Saturday night after K-State beat Baylor, like the whole fever pitch, like, that Drew Barrymore offers to take Jimmy Fallon to Paris. And he said, the team needs me. Like, I can't go. Like, they play. I don't even know who they play. The team needs him. And I kept telling her, I was like, the team needs me right now. Like, I need to be here. I need to be slugging some 360 vodka because I'm going to be a nervous wreck on Saturday. Like, you don't want me in Chicago because I'm going to be the most nervous wreck the entire day. I mean, I know it's a 1:00 kick, but if K-State loses, like I'm going to be sulking around and be miserable and won't talk to anybody. So, yeah. But don't tweet my wife. I'll handle it. I'm going to stick the thermometer up to the light, get it hot, and get sick right before that trip, so I can't go.
There you go. There you go. Okay. That sounds like a good plan. Hey, I've got one last thing for us here. And just squeeze in a little bit of hoops talk. All right. Because if basketball keeps filling up the highlight reel the way that they are, we're going to keep talking about it. But we'll get to that next. All right. Back here to close things up on Threemont. K-State, 9-point road win at Cal. Kicked off a really nice weekend for everybody. Covered the spread on the road while experiencing some legitimate adversity after jumping out to a 20-plus point lead, seeing it trimmed all the way to 1 at one point, I believe, right, for Cal in the second half, and then able to turn it on, make some plays. Marquise Noel kind of pulled K-State out of the hole, and they found a way to get it done. Keontae Johnson, a guy they went to when they really needed a bucket a couple of times, and we got another just insane highlight out of Marquise Noel behind the back on the break to Naquan Tomlin, who is just going to be a delight to watch throughout the rest of this year. So all things considered, pretty darn good showing there for Jerome Tang in his first road game at K-State as the Cats are now 2-0.
Yeah, hell of a week for K-State fans, right? You got the basketball team, men's basketball team went 2-0, women's basketball team went 2-0, and they got a road win. They beat Wisconsin and Milwaukee. I think the volleyball team won too, I was told, and your Chiefs won on Sunday. So Iowa State lost, Kansas lost, Nebraska lost. I mean, everything that could go right for a K-State fan this past week went right for a K-State fan this past week. No, that was probably a perfect scenario if you want to draw it out for if you're the Kansas State coaches, right? So you go out there and you basically just pound the tar out of a high major team. And I know that it's not a good one at Cal. They lost to UC Davis the game prior, but you pound the crap out of for over half the game, a high major team on the road on their court in what was not a hostile environment, but still away from home and in a road venue. And then you come back and you face a little adversity, like Kurtz said, and you're in challenging times, and it's time to pucker up, and you'll see what your team is made of from a mental standpoint, and then respond, and you break that baby out to almost double digits again. So you get a nice win over a high major team on the road where you looked encouraging for probably 25, 30 minutes, and then you responded to a little bit of adversity, got the win, and you have a lot of things to still improve upon. I don't know that you can ask for a better scenario if you're the Kansas State coaching staff. What I will say is they're going to have a hard time drumming up maybe some competition on that non-conference portion of the schedule, because the deeper that we get into the schedule, the less desirable some of these teams look from a competitive standpoint. I think Rhode Island lost again, so they have not just lost to Quinnipiac, they lost to someone else. Pretty embarrassing. So that that's the Cayman Islands opener, I believe. I think that one looks to be a pretty simple first game in overseas. Yeah,
Rhode Island, and then Wichita State lost to Alcorn State this weekend. K-State's got them on December 3rd.
Marco's old team, yeah.
I still think there's some teams on the schedule, like the Cayman Islands tournament. If they get past Rhode Island, they potentially play Tulane, which is probably – I think they're an NCAA tournament team. They return a lot, and they're pretty highly thought of. Ken Palm has them as a top 60 team in the country. So, and I don't know what to make of LSU and Florida. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some potential opportunities. I mean, Nebraska's 2-0. I mean, I don't know.
Are they really?
Yeah.
But I know this has nothing. How about Louisville? Jeez, cow, what is going on there?
Yeah.
When was the last time Nebraska football was 2-0?
I don't know. I'd have to go through I'd have to get my encyclopedia out to go back to the archives of that.
I'd have to bust out VH1 I love the 90s.
Yeah, I did want to congratulate Coach Kevin Sutton on his first victory as the Pac-12 network.
Jerome Yang.
Yeah, Jerome Yang also got a win. Just an embarrassing production. I will never watch the Pac-12 network again unless K-State is on it. That is such a pathetic production.
And if you're listening to this, remember to cancel whatever subservice you subscribe to watch that game.
First of all, DY, I used your login info, and did you keep getting the alert like every 10 minutes that too many people were watching? And
I thought it said
I feel like we were all booting each other because I just kept hitting continue watching, and then I'd get it for like 7 minutes, and then like I probably booted you off or somebody else.
I ended up just watching on Drew screen. It never happened to me then. So.
It kept happening to me, but it was fine. Thank you so much for the login. So I really appreciate that, so we could watch the game. And the thing I'll say about the actual game, what really impresses me, and again, I know Cal's not a juggernaut by any means. They're an offensive team and is down a couple guys, but what really impresses me is that for a new coaching staff and so many new guys, their defensive rotations are so sound. And the way they lock down defensively is very impressive for this early in the season. We've now seen it multiple times. And for them to be as locked in as they are and knowing they're only going to get better, that is very encouraging to me. And you see glimpses of everything like Keontae. Like you see with Keontae, like they know already they can go ISO with him when they need a basket and he can make a play. And then the soft ass officials can call a technical foul for, making a play and screaming. So big deal. But Keontae's showing a lot of glimpses. He almost had a double-double, 16 and 9. Naquan Tomlin is an athletic freak that we see. He hits a 3 on Saturday.
He hit a 3.
He hit a 3. You start to see like, okay, if he can be a 32% three-point shooter, like some of the moves he makes, he had a pull-up move as well that he made earlier in the game. The talent is certainly there. And then Marquise Noel obviously was a critical piece in that game because when things got tight, he kind of put the team on his back and made 2 or 3 really big plays, both on the offensive and defensive end. I know he made a couple mistakes late with maybe rushing a shot on a possession, but and got taken out of the game. But he made some big plays that a senior makes. So credit to him for doing so.
Loved a lot of what I saw for sure. Congrats to those guys for getting that win. When is the next game? I don't even know, actually.
UMKC this Thursday.
Okay.
I am focused on the Roos. So
thought you were focused on West Virginia.
Well, I focus on multiple things. So I'll focus on UMKC Thursday. UMKC is really bad.
They covered against LSU.
Yeah, they did. They lost to Lincoln University a couple weeks ago. I don't know. K-State will handle UMKC easily. And then the Cayman Islands tournament is after that on what I consider to be one of the best weeks of the year. Thanksgiving week, you've got all the basketball tournaments, the Battle for Atlantis, the Maui Invitational, the Cayman Islands tournament, that I'm sure Jerome Tang has no interest in really wanting to be in that tournament. But thanks to Coach Weber, they're playing there in the Cayman Islands. So one of the best weeks, feast week, and, football on all week. So hopefully everybody's in a good mood. K-State's coming off a win over West Virginia and a win over UMKC, and we can lock in on some hoops that week. And then John will be a nervous wreck thinking about the KU game all week.
Well, not as much if Kansas takes care of business against the old Longhorns this week. Let's just knock that out of the way too. So, you're going to Arlington. We can all be booking our hotel rooms and our trips and all that and just gearing up and ready to go.
We need to leave some people back for the Wichita State game if we make it to Arlington.
True.
Yeah.
John, you going to rest the starters against KU if that scenario plays out?
Good question.
Because it's not a rivalry. It's not a rivalry. Remember, that's what KU fans always remind us. So maybe we just rest the starters.
We've got more important things to worry about than playing regular season. Okay, I'm not even going to go there. Let's just, all right, it's going to do it. You're trying to draw me into that. I'm not doing it. I am focused on West Virginia. Okay. Not so much Kansas City now, Cole, by the way, not UMKC, Kansas City.
All right.
Not so much Kansas City because I think they'll be fine. They can handle that. I'm going to laser focus on West Virginia this week. Shout out to 360 Vodka, Holiday Distillery, Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon. Go stock up. Appreciate their support of the podcast as always. Appreciate Jed Marshall behind the scenes, Tucker Franklin as well for the work that he does. For Cole Manbeck and Derek Young, I am John Kurtz. We'll see you later.